on the News Channel 5 network. This is Score on Business.
Hey, welcome to Score on Business. My name's Pete Hendricks. I'm a serial entrepreneur and your host for today. Score is an organization which is focused on helping small businesses and entrepreneurs to succeed. In the Nashville market, we're specifically focused here. Check us out at scorenashville.org. Okay, well, let's share some value. Our first guest is Mark Kinney of Hippo Solutions. Mark, tell us a little bit about Hippo.
Well, Hippo Solutions is a consulting company and training company specializing in organizational communication. And we just have a passion for companies to perform at their best, and just have seen ineffective communication driven by attitudes and behaviors and beliefs as one of the key factors for poor performance and lack of engagement. And so we help companies address that.
You know, my belief is that poor communication is at a core of trouble throughout the history of humankind.
Absolutely.
So can you share with us some common examples of poor organizational communication? And most importantly, what do you do about that?
Sure, absolutely. And interestingly, you know, some of them are really simple, things we know but we just don't do. For example, a lot of times we have a bent to tell and not to listen. So leaders and managers think they're listening, but really they're telling, or at least they're not listening so that people think that they're heard. And so people don't feel engaged, they don't feel heard, they don't feel empowered. And so that affects performance. That drives some of their attitudes and beliefs and comes out in behaviors, and that affects their performance. That is an example of something you can't just give somebody a book to tell them how to do something. They really need practice and experience and some good feedback on that. So one of the ways we help with that, with leaders and managers in particular, is we actually bring in live actors to set up an environment where they get to practice, get some experience, and have a coach with some to give them some feedback on that. Another problem is assumptions. We make assumptions. We assume that people understand what we're communicating, or we make assumptions about another person or a leader or management or another group or our customers. And a lot of times that's just based on perception, which usually isn't based entirely on reality. And again, that drives attitudes and beliefs and behaviors, and can really hamper performance because we start to behave that way. That's something that's hard for an organization to see. So we'll do some discovery, and sometimes what we'll do is we'll literally bring in actors and do something called business theater, where we'll play out and have them observe what's really going on and the effect on that, and initiate a conversation for how to change that.
You know, I think that it's really brilliant to have the actors because it adds to the realism.
Adds to the realism, and it's almost a communication vehicle where you can communicate some of these messages in a way that's better heard by folks instead of just telling them.
Yeah, and I think of looking back over my career, assumptions have been an area where I work on not assuming it, but the reality is we all have a certain background. We see things a certain way, and other people don't see it that way, don't perceive the world the same.
That's right. Our experiences, even our worldview, that all factors into that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, talking about you also are an entrepreneur. What are some lessons you have learned as an entrepreneur that you would share with others?
Well, like many entrepreneurs, I've learned many lessons, sometimes the hard way, but here's two. One is to be really, really good at one thing. I started a software company about 10 years ago, and it's amazing how easy it is to want to do everything that every client wants you to do and get away from your core competency. So being sure you're really good, knowing what you're going to be great at, and serving those customers that are going to make you great is something really important. Jim Collins in his book,
the hedgehog.
The hedgehog principle, exactly right. Exactly right.
That just makes so much sense, and yet I spun my wheels for some amount of time with this business doing that.
As did I.
Yeah, I think all people do. Being an entrepreneur is where you really have to bring your game to the A level.
Absolutely. And then another example, or another lesson I've learned is just be careful financing through debt. When I started, I picked up books on how to start a company and read articles. And there's like this expectation that you're going to go borrow a lot of money. And the problem with that is you don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And so you have to try things and make mistakes.
Right.
Well, if you finance those things through debt, then what you're doing is you're paying for those mistakes well into the future, which
Right.
adds some stress that you don't need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's touch bases back to communication. Can you think of one more example another example of ineffective communication?
Well, applied to an entrepreneur, let's say. There's things that you need to do as an entrepreneur, such as listening to advice, seeking out and building relationships. So sometimes communication isn't just us talking with each other, but it's what goes on between the ears,
Yeah.
what we tell ourselves, what we believe, and sometimes fear and pride gets in there and
Oh, absolutely.
and tells us things like I'm good at this, I got that, or I'm right,
Yeah.
or I'm not very good at this, or I don't need help, or something like that. So sometimes it's just that internal communication that drives some of our behaviors that we need to watch out for as well.
I'll tell you, you are in a great space because communication is so tricky and it causes so much trouble. I think about the time when there was an exceedingly expensive mistake on one of the space projects when we were doing those. You know, the Americans were calculating in our number system, and they were in decimal elsewhere. Yeah.
Little mistake there that has
Yeah.
a big impact, huh?
Yeah. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Hey, scorenashville.org. We'll be right back.